So in 1964, they traveled from Sacramento, where we live, to Esalen Institute on the Big Sur coast of California, south of Monterey, for a weekend seminar. And the presenters were Timothy Leary, Richard Alpert, and Ralph Metzner, who had previously written a book called The Psychedelic Experience that my mom and my aunt had read. And I got Timothy Leary's autograph in our copy. And so my mom met Richard Alpert at this seminar, and they hit it off. They became friends, and they stayed friends. They stayed close friends for a decade. In 1966, we were living in this big house right on the beach in Venice, California, near LA. Owsley Stanley is famous for manufacturing LSD, and his protege Timothy Scully learned from him how to manufacture LSD. Okay, these were close friends of my mom's. Okay, and that's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a side note, but my aunt Timothy Leary was busted in Texas for 2 joints, right? And he was looking at 30 years for 2 joints. Right. My aunt became the head of the West Coast Timothy Leary Defense Fund. And they held an event in early 1966, late 1965. They held an event as a fundraiser in San Francisco. And that's where my mom met Owsley. And Owsley was there with the Grateful Dead because they lived in LA for 6 months in 1966. And Owsley invited my mom and aunt to the Watts acid test in February 1966. My aunt brought me and my cousin along to operate a hand-cranked strobe light. So my introduction, now I didn't take any LSD, but I was there with the Grateful Dead, with Wavy Gravy, with the Merry Pranksters, with Owsley, at the Watts acid test in early 1966.
And how old were you again?
12.
You were 12.
Yeah. Now, if you've ever read the book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, which is a very famous book. Okay? My mom is in there, but not by her name. Okay? There's a kind of an interview about the Watts acid test, and the interviewee is talking about the different things that happened in the Watts acid test. And she mentions this much older lady, and she ends up calling her like the good witch. Right? That was my mom. My mom was the good witch of the Watts acid test. Tim Scully was there. He was Owsley's protege. Tim Scully and our good friend Don Douglas went on in the late 60s to manufacture 4 or 5 million hits of Orange Sunshine LSD. And Tim Scully and I are friends to this day. He's part of my extended family. I recall most clearly is that it was crowded and it was hot, and that there were people coming through the windows because the entranceway was clogged and they couldn't get in that way. Okay. In fact, in the electric Kool-Aid acid test, it talks about the strobe light changing speeds to keep time with the music. And that was me doing that. I remember keeping time to the music, okay, because it was a hand cranked strobe light, right? Right, and it was this big contraption thing that my aunt had constructed. Oh, and then the other part I do remember really well is that it took forever for the music to come on, and people were just standing around like hours. There was a complication with the electronics. And Bear was Owsley Stanley was nicknamed Bear. Never the Bear, just Bear. Okay, Bear, and he always smelled like patchouli. He was working frantically to get something fixed so that the music could come on.
Look at all the lovely people. Look at all the lovely people. Jonathan Sully picks up a shadow.